I truly believe God's got something special for, as I said, not just the church, it's the community. And so, Sean, brother, it's all yours.
Well, good morning. How many of you have no idea who I am? All right. Most of you have no idea who I am. Okay, perfect. Super brief introduction about me. My name is Sean. When I'm not doing what I'm doing today, I'm a worship leader at my church, so thank you to those who led the music today. I really appreciated it. I am, in addition to a worship leader, a husband. 18 years next month will be our anniversary. A couple little kids. I am a licensed mental health counselor in our wonderful state of Indiana. Okay, all right. Go Hoosiers. That wasn't an IU thing. That was just, we're all Hoosiers as far as I'm concerned. Boilermakers, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I have a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry from Trevecca Nazarene University. Trevecca, that's the other Nazarene University in Tennessee. And then I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling from Huntington University up near Fort Wayne, for those of you who care about those types of things. This morning, we are going to explore something that is often misunderstood in the church and even outside the church. It's something that we've all experienced individually. It's something that we have experienced other people experiencing. It is something that we have been harmed by, and it is something that unfortunately some of us have harmed others by. What am I talking about? I'm talking about anger. And isn't it interesting? So I've been planning this message for some time, and then I discovered a couple weeks ago y'all started a study on anger. How many of you are in that study? All right, a few of you. So for the rest of you, this may be new information. Graduate school is when I really started exploring this topic of anger. That was 9 years ago. I always thought anger was just bad. It was just wrong, right? It was just sinful. And there's no shortage of passages to suggest that to me. For instance, in Ecclesiastes, we read, "Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools." Okay. Proverbs 15, "A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel." Proverbs 22, "Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered." Anybody worn out yet? "Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil." Proverbs 14, it just keeps going. "One who is quick-tempered displays folly." Colossians 3, "But now you must rid yourselves of all such things as these: rage, anger, malice, slander, etc. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. There's no shortage of conviction for me when I read those passages. And it seems to be a very, very clear message, because in fact it is. I don't know about you, but when I read those, I feel like I'm supposed to turn into a human Labrador retriever or something, just fluffy and happy. And when I run in the field, it should just, my ears, like everything slow motion. But then I continue to experience anger. I continue to be angry. Though I am born again of God and have His Spirit, these things still come up in me, and I go, well, what's that about? And then this scripture pops up. "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. That's from Ephesians 4. So if I'm honest, church is a good place to be honest. That's confusing to me on the surface. We also read that God was clearly angry with the Israelites. I mean, really angry with the Israelites. Mark 3 talks about Jesus looking around at people in anger. He chased people with a whip out of the temple. If I was chasing somebody with a whip, Pastor, I think I would be probably angry. I think that's kind of like you kind of have to be angry to be chasing somebody with a whip. And yet it's Jesus. He's justified in what he did, right? God was justified in his anger. So somebody sort this out for me, right? That's what we're going to do today. Brief message. We'll be out of here by 2, 3 o'clock. It's just, okay, I'm supposed to be honest. Be more like 4 or 5. So today, we're going to explore what anger is. For those of you in the study, I'm going to try to move past the things that would be review. I'm not going to not say them, but maybe not spend as much time on them as I would otherwise. But we're going to look at what anger is. We're going to look at how to express it in a healthy and holy way, and what happens when we get it wrong. My goal is we will leave with a deeper understanding of the topic. There's this really fun passage in Proverbs. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge. This is the part that I like. He who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. So it's my goal that by the end of this, okay, it's really not going to be that long, this message about anger, that we will leave with more understanding, that might help us have a cooler spirit. If anger has ever gotten the best of you, keep your hands down. See, it's unanimous. It's literally, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I got that from my old pastor, Pastor Lenny Weishart, Dr. Lenny Weishart, if any of you know who that is. So what is anger? Well, in short, anger is an alarm system that alerts us to something wrong in or around us. That's what anger is. Probably an even better way to articulate that and conceptualize it is anger is like the check engine light in your car. Is anyone triggered all of a sudden? Anyone's check engine light on in their car right now? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Does that bring up some anger in you sometimes? Okay, never mind. But anger is like a check engine light. And a check engine light, it's helpful and frustrating at the same time. You're driving along, all of a sudden, ding, and you see this yellow glow of death. Like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Maybe my gas cap is loose, or maybe my engine's about to fail. We don't know. And anger is just like that. Anger says, hey, there's something wrong in or around your system, but it doesn't tell you what is wrong. So what do we do with that, right? Well, we have to go get our scan tool or our code reader. How many of you have a scan tool or code reader? Yeah, that's what I thought. You plug that dude in, you're like, oh, it's a P0300. What's a P? Exactly. This little guy up here. English, please. What's a P0300? Well, it means that there's a misfire, a cylinder misfire. You go, okay, what do I do with that? So you take it to somebody, or you lean in further to figure out what that P0300 means for your vehicle. That means maybe there's some kind of ignition issue or whatever, fuel, whatever it might be, there's a misfire, so we have to lean into that and figure out what it is. But the check engine light says there's something wrong. It doesn't tell you what's wrong, so further exploration is necessary. In the book Boundaries, how many of you have heard or read the book Boundaries by Drs. Henry Cloud and John Townsend? A few of us. They put it this, Christian authors, Christian psychologists, they put it this way: anger is a friend. Whoa. It was created by God for a purpose to tell us there's a problem that needs to be confronted. So how do we understand what our anger is telling us? We scan the system for problems, or we go to somebody who can maybe help scan it for us. As a mental health counselor, sometimes that's me, and I'm happy to do it. See, the emotional codes that set our anger light, remember, anger is secondary to other things in most cases. We see the check engine light. What's the primary thing that's tripping that? The emotional codes, if you will, that set our anger light are things like these. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a flyover, okay? Fear, hurt, loss, sadness, what I call shame activation, boundary violations, unmet needs, or frustrated goals. That's just a few. We feel anger, the check engine light illuminates, but it takes some time and attention and humility to understand what the primary issue is. We might even say that anger is provoked by other things. Can we use that language? And before I dig into these, let's go back to the scripture for a minute. You know how I was so confused about all the passages that said don't be angry, and then there's this other one that says be angry and don't sin? Remember how I was confused about that? This is exciting. This is really exciting. In the original Greek, the word used for anger in Colossians 3, which is, you must rid yourselves of all these things, anger, rage, malice, etc. In that verse, the Greek word that we translate anger is a noun. Okay, I'm going to keep talking, and I think you'll get it in a second. The first one, get rid of anger as a noun. Oh, that's so cool. Well, only in contrast to this. In Ephesians 4, when it says be angry and don't sin, that word is a verb. Is this thing on? Okay. Get rid of the thing that's angry. Get rid of the noun. Get rid of the disposition. That's what it's talking about. But in this case, when you are provoked, that's what the verb in this case is pointing to. When anger is provoked in you, do not sin. And how do we do that? We keep from sinning when we keep the provocation from becoming a disposition. We keep from sinning when we keep the provocation from becoming the disposition. When you think of somebody that's holy, when you think of somebody that's mentally, emotionally mature, spiritually mature, do you think of an angry person? But what about that person when that thing happened? You know what I'm talking about? And anger came up for them and they handled it really well. They're like, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. But this issue needs addressed. That's different, right? There's self-control there. No, we'll get into all that in just a moment. But we avoid sinning in our anger by properly dealing with the things that provoke or incite the anger. In the book, Never Get Angry Again, our Jewish brother, Dr. David Lieberman, has this to say about anger. To paraphrase, anger is used either to inflict pain or to avoid pain. To inflict pain or to avoid pain. Using our anger to inflict pain on others that's pretty self-explanatory, right? We're harming others when we do that. For one thing, the fruit of the Spirit it includes controlling ourselves, not others. And often we employ anger to try to control other people. That's harmful. That's sinful. Because when we do that, we undermine their agency and their God-given free will. We rob them of the opportunity to cooperate when we try to insist that they comply. Going any deeper in that is beyond the scope of this morning's message, but nevertheless, when we use our pain to control others, anger to control others, we're in the wrong. I also believe that using our anger to avoid pain is also sinful. What? You're telling me avoiding pain is sinful? I'm not saying go out there and jump face first into the concrete floor. That's not what I mean. I don't mean that. But in the book of Proverbs, the sluggard, the foolish man, is one who avoids pain. Isn't that interesting? The foolish man is one who avoids pain. Is it any wonder then that anger resides in the lap of fools? I will continue to extrapolate this out and make it clear. How does this relate to dealing with the things that provoke anger? Do you remember James when he says, I'm getting ahead of myself, excuse me. There's a couple points from James. James talks about trials and tests producing spiritual maturity, right? And a critical piece is the word endurance or perseverance. And you know what that means? To remain under. Consider it joy when you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance or endurance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Perseverance, endurance means that we intentionally remain under the trial. Imagine somebody going to the Olympics or trying to go to the Olympics. They go to that training facility, was it like Colorado or something? Because it's up high and they don't have a lot of oxygen up there. Okay. And they walk into this facility and they go, wow, this looks hard. This looks really hard. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go get a burger. Anybody want to join me? And then off they go. He wants a burger. Okay. I don't actually have a burger right now. I'm sorry. But they chose not to remain under the trial that would potentially put them on the podium where they would enjoy success. Okay? They sidestep the process of maturity, which is to remain under the trial. Anger is a very effective insulator from pain. Anger is an effective insulator from pain. Remember the passage from James about man's anger not bringing about the righteous life that God desires? Remember that part? Could it be? Now, I'm not a theologian. I don't play one on TV. But could it be that the reason that man's anger doesn't bring about the righteous life that God desires is because it insulates us from dealing with the things that will bring about the righteous life that God desires? Said a little differently. If my anger insulates me from my awareness that I'm afraid, how will I know to trade in that fear for faith? If anger insulates me from my awareness that I have fear about something, how will I know to trade that fear in for faith? Exactly, you don't. Because dealing with the fear is an extremely important part of the Christian experience, because I'm not sure which translation it is, but apparently there's like 365 times in the Bible where it says, do not be afraid or fear not. It has been said that anger is the part of you that cares about you the most, and it doesn't want you to be uncomfortable. So it tries to keep you from dealing with things like fear. How many of you just think about fear a lot in a constructive way and deal with it every morning? Like, you know what? This morning, I feel afraid about this, and I love interacting with this idea, and I'm afraid of this, and I'm gonna trade all that in for faith. Sometimes we maybe aren't super great with that. Why is it so important to deal with fear? Again, if anger keeps us from our awareness of the things that provoke it, perhaps we err as Christians and in this experience. It's important to deal with fear for one very significant reason. Fear and faith do this. Jesus said, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat, drink, what you'll wear. Is life not more than those things? Don't seek the provisions like the pagans do. Instead, seek the provider. See, if we are unaware of our fear, we'll probably be led by it. And if we're led by our fear, it's going to point us and take us in the direction opposite faith. Oh, but if my anger keeps me from my awareness, I think I'm starting to get it. We have to deal with things like that. If fear provokes my anger, I must embrace. This is the fun part. Okay? This is the fun part. If fear provokes my anger, I must embrace the pain of fear in order to handle that properly and healthily. Just admitting it is so good for you spiritually. Saying, you know what, Pastor, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this, that, or the other thing. And I'm now realizing I need to trade that in for faith. Embracing your weakness is a great thing so that the power of Christ may rest on you. But if we don't deal with the fear, do you see how all this works? You're humbly expressing yourself to others. You're drawing people in, you're asking them for help. This is very good for you spiritually. The clients that struggle most, again, I'm a clinical mental health counselor. The clients that struggle the most with their anger are those who refuse, in some cases, or at least struggle to embrace the pain of interacting with anger's provocations. Additionally, research suggests that the harder we try to avoid suffering, the more we suffer. I think it's time to be more like the buffalo. You know what I'm talking about? You know about the buffalo? You're like, what? Okay, so the buffalo, they're kind of big critters, right? And when a storm is coming, you know what they do? They walk toward the storm. Why? Well, they might get blown over if they just try to go parallel with it. Maybe that's why. But perhaps it's because they've discovered that the quickest way out of a storm is through it. So they go toward the storm because then they're moving this way and the storm's moving this way. That's a lot faster. One time I was coming home from vacation from Tybee Island, Georgia, and this rainstorm, I'm pretty sure, was traveling at exactly 70 miles an hour. Because for 13 hours, it was like this. And I don't know if you enjoy 12-hour drives at the end of vacation, but sometimes you're tired and you go, can we just have a little sun? I haven't slept for a week and all the things, right? But what if I'm going to briefly interact with a couple of these other things for the sake of time. One that I want to touch on here is hurt. Hurt is often a motivator for anger. And what I mean by that is if we're hurt and if our angry part is trying to keep us from experiencing discomfort, it will really try to distance us from hurt. Let's say anger comes up for you when you think about a certain person or when you're around a certain person. You're like, okay, I'm angry. What if this is about hurt? So then you spend some time in thought and prayer, maybe talking to a trusted friend, and you discover, there's this thing that happened between us 8 months ago, 9, 10, 5 years ago. I think I have some forgiveness work to do. But if our anger keeps us from our awareness of our hurt, we won't get to that point. What if that exploration says, you know what? I don't think they have any idea that they hurt me in that situation. I don't think it's about forgiveness in this context. I think I actually need to confront them in a very healthy, godly, holy way. So our exploration takes us to a place of forgiveness or confrontation, both very important in the Christian life, right? Sadness and loss. Touch on this briefly. Anger is often closely related to sadness, which often concerns loss. And loss comes in all shapes and sizes. Maybe we've lost a friend, or a spouse, or a dream, or connection. Anger often presents when we experience a loss of connection with a loved one or a friend, and we're trying to get it back. Let's hang out here for just a second. Okay, loss of connection, anger is a response to that. One researcher, this is from the book called Fight Right, which is primarily about romantic relationships. One researcher noticed when people were experiencing emotions that led them to withdraw from the world, sadness, fear, and disgust, they had a right frontal asymmetry, more activity in the right side of their brain. When they were experiencing or processing emotions like interest, curiosity, joy, and anger, they had a left frontal asymmetry. More activity on the left meant they wanted to engage with what they were experiencing rather than withdraw. God's anger related to the Israelites was about reestablishing connection in many cases. So these researchers were excited, particularly in the context of love and romantic relationships, that when they were excited, curious, or angry, that they now consider anger an approach emotion. See, when we're angry, we need to approach fear, hurt, loss, sadness, shame, boundaries, etc. And I'll start bringing this to a close here. Shame activation. Boy, when we feel shame, our anger, it's right there. Why? Shame has been described as the most uncomfortable of all feelings. What is shame? It's a sense that I'm bad, I'm inadequate, there's something wrong with me, I'm flawed. How many of you want to be reminded of that? Right? So if I'm having a conversation with you and you're talking to me about how your experience with me was hurtful or harmful, and I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, yeah, I get that. I really messed up there. But my ego's like, I can't handle being reminded about how bad I already feel like I am. So my anger is going to push you away, and it's going to have a destructive wake, right? The reason that the righteousness of God comes through dealing with shame is because we realize that so much of what is shame was dealt with at salvation. My badness is redeemed. My inadequacy is supplanted with the sufficiency and the power of Christ. And the sense of being flawed, you're a new creation, brother. You're a new creation, sister. So when something comes up, when Pastor Mark says, hey, Sean, you know, when you threw that tomato at my face, it was really not cool. I'm like, all right. You know, I'm aware that I throw tomatoes at people's faces sometimes, and so I don't really do that. I like this. He's keeping me accountable, like everything I say. I really like this. But a humble spirit would say, you know what? I'm aware of that weakness, so I'm not surprised you bumped up against it. I'm sorry. And we move forward, right? Okay. Sort of in conclusion here. This is my first conclusion. Boundaries. Boundary violations. Oh, if you want anger to come up, just violate someone's boundaries or have someone violate yours. They may be the provocation that's most extreme. When God was angry, it was about boundaries of the law, right? When Jesus was angry, it was about boundaries of the temple. So you're saying it's okay to be angry at someone when they cross our boundaries? Let's unpack that briefly right now. In short, it's okay that anger comes up for you and energizes you to take action against a boundary violation, but turning against someone in anger will likely make the problem worse. Okay? First of all, let's define boundaries. In short, they are property lines. We were having this conversation even before church this morning. Boundaries are property lines. This is me, that is you. I am responsible for my thoughts, my feelings, and my behavior. You are responsible for yours. I'm not asking you to take responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. I'm not going to take responsibility for yours. Those are healthy boundaries, the separation. So back to the question, is it okay to be angry at someone when they cross our boundaries? If you turn against someone, you run the risk of misunderstanding boundaries, actually. For instance, I'm really angry at my spouse because they make me so mad when they don't offer to help with housework. Okay, number one, you may feel anger. That doesn't mean they made you feel angry. That's you not taking responsibility for yourself. And that's a boundary violation. Pastor Mark, where did you get this guy? Get him out of here. This is uncomfortable. You may feel anger. It doesn't mean that they made you angry. That's you, again, misunderstanding. In fact, if you turn against your spouse in that kind of situation, you may reasonably anticipate anger coming up for them, too, since you're asking them to take care of your feelings. So now you're critical of them. You made me mad. You can generally expect a defensive response. They're still responsible for themselves, but that's a good way to tee that up. Another problem, okay, number two, you are responsible for getting your needs met. That's different than meeting your own needs, but you're responsible for getting your needs met. This is boundaries, and when these are violated, anger is going to come up. If, while trimming the hedges out front, you would like some help, ask nicely for help. I say to my children, my 7-year-old, ask nicely for what you want, right? How many of us say that to our children? Instead, we might go, they're just sitting in there drinking their iced tea, couldn't care less that I'm out here sweating, blah, 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 right? When boundaries are understood properly, we simply walk up to our spouse and ask nicely for the help we need. If they say no, then we adjust or share with them, since you're unavailable to help, I may not be able to get this all done before we leave for dinner tonight. Oh, okay, that's not a problem. Wait, that's not a problem? That's actually why this whole thing started in the first place, because I was afraid that you would be upset if I didn't finish this before dinner. Do you see all the issues here with boundaries? Because in fact, I was protecting myself from the possibility of criticism and got defensive without even communicating. If you've ever interacted with your spouse or a close friend or somebody close to you that way, keep your hands down. See, again, it's none of us are immune from this. There's an inverted thing about boundaries, too. If anger doesn't come up for you when your boundaries are violated, you may struggle with shame. I'm bad, I'm inadequate, I don't deserve any better than this treatment anyway. And that might be the result of some trauma. Healthy boundaries keep good things in your yard, and they keep bad things out of your yard. Shame-prone people, hi, I'm Sean, I'm recovering from shame. We tend to have inverted boundaries. We keep the bad in and the good out, because that's what we think we deserve. Again, going any deeper is beyond the scope of this morning, but something to think about. In a nutshell, boundaries are this. Am I allowing something harmful in my life I don't want? Am I not taking responsibility for getting something good that I do want? That's really what it boils down to. Am I taking care of somebody else's feelings? Am I asking someone else to take care of my feelings? If so, boundary violations. frustrated goals, unmet needs, whatever. Okay, conclusion number 2. This will be the real conclusion. There are 2 ways to improperly handle anger. We've already seen that a little bit when we turn against ourselves, when we turn against others, when we try to inflict pain, when we try to avoid pain. From a biological perspective, there are 2 ways to inappropriately handle anger: by suppressing it or by giving it full vent, as in fits of rage. In the book, When the Body Says No, written by a medical doctor who, let's just say, since there are young ears present, he was a grandchild of some Holocaust casualties. So he lived in Germany, in Hungary during German occupation, if I'm understanding all of that correctly. So he understands trauma, and from a medical perspective, the repression of anger and the unregulated acting out of it are both examples of abnormal release of emotions that is at the root of disease. The repression of anger is a major risk factor for disease because it increases physiological stress on the organism. In his book, he cites a line from a movie, "I never get angry. I grow a tumor instead." It's kind of funny, but it's actually kind of true, because that's one of the things that can happen. Ignoring or stuffing our anger is not the answer. Interacting with its motivators is. Not only is the unbridled outpouring of anger harmful to the recipients or bystanders, but it can also be deadly to the one who rages. Heart attacks can follow upon outbursts of rage. In general, high blood pressure, heart disease are more likely to happen in people who harbor hostility. That sounds like a bitterness message, which we don't have time for today. Anger is a check engine light. It's inviting you to explore fear, hurt, loss, sadness, shame, unmet needs, boundary violations, and the list goes on. If you find yourself stuck in anger in any way, I invite you to invite the Holy Spirit into that part and say, "Lord, I need your help. I need your guidance. I don't understand what to do here, and I want to." Because the last thing we want to do is hurt ourselves and hurt each other. Because we're the body. We're part of the body. We need each other. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.